Let's talk about this Boerboel story that Govan Whittles is running now. I didn't realize that we export Boerboels to the United States, and that I didn't know that the dogs had been declared official land race dogs as well, which sounds very, very strange. Do they race Boerboels? I've never heard of that one. Well, Govan Whittles is smiling, and he joins us. Hiya, Govan. First of all, do they race Boerboels? What's that all about?
Well, as far as I know, they don't race the actual dogs, but declaring them land race dogs entitles them to protection under the Act of the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries. So there's money set aside to make sure that Boerboels are protected in South Africa.
All right, they call them race dogs even though they don't. That sounds very strange, sounds like a loophole. Why is this story important?
Well, it's actually a huge trade internationally to trade in Boerboels, and it's happening across the country. And it's important because we have a dealer here that has spent the equivalent of 200,000 Rand in the United States, and he claims that the dogs that he received arrived there in a terrible condition with tumors on their stomachs. He claims that they were not treated well at all, and he's launched an official complaint with the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, and they've taken the case to the police to see whether it is legitimate. And as a result of that, the South African Boerboel Breeders Society has come out to defend this breeder. We're not mentioning who he is because we've been in contact with him, but he's chosen not to respond at this stage. And hopefully he said he would consider responding at a later stage. So once we have more detailed information from him, we'll bring him into the story. For now, we do know that the department is investigating the seriousness of this, and they say there's contravention of several parts of the Animal Protection Act, and they need to ensure that the National SPCA also gets involved to determine the dogs that left the country, whether they're being bred properly and whether they're being treated properly. And they need to look into whether the illegal shipment of Boerboels to another country is something that happens on a regular occurrence, because here the department has confirmed that the dogs, these puppies, left the country illegally and they arrived in the United States with no paperwork. And that was for a transaction of more than 200,000 Rand.
And the concerning thing is, if this supposedly is a legitimate and respected breeder, and if he's getting support from the association, and it turns out that these dreadful things were done, then what does it say about checks and balances, and what does it say about the whole business?
Well, it's also very concerning because the South African breeders internationally are held in very high regard, and we're known as one of the countries in the world that produce the best Boerboels. And we actually have several associations that have set up extensive programs for breeding thoroughbred Boerboels. And the department says it's very concerned that this will impact on the trade, because, of course, the economy benefits from this trade.
Yes, of course, dollars coming in, yeah.
Yes, and of course, the department has a close relationship with the breeding society, so anything that impacts negatively on that has a potential to destabilize the entire trade.
Presumably you're looking, if anybody else has got stories or anybody knows about particularly the illegal side of things, you'd like to hear from them.
That's right, and mostly what I found in this instance is that the illegality occurs during the trade part of the negotiation. So if someone is in another country and tries to buy Boerboels, the process would usually be manipulated during the shipping part of it, and when the documentation needs to be signed off to prove that the dogs that are being sent out are in a good condition, and are in fact thoroughbred dogs.
So is it a case of getting rid of the rubbish? Is the scam the fact that the bad dogs, the rubbish, I shouldn't use that term, but you know what I mean, the ones who don't qualify for the highest standards, they're somehow being dumped on duping Americans or people overseas?
That's right. The breeder in the US, Paul Riba, he's furious because he says he feels like he's received the runt of the litter. And the Boerboels that have arrived in the United States are not in a good condition, and he feels that he's being neglected because there's no way that he could come to South Africa and query his problem here. That is the gist of the problem with this specific breeder, but as I said, the story extends to many other parts of the province with different breeders and different societies.
All right, thanks very much indeed. Thanks very much indeed. And that's Govan Whittles. And you can go to Eyewitness News or get in touch with us and we'll pass you on to Govan if you know anything about that. I'd like to hear from breeders. What do you feel about it?